yeah, just all the trigger warnings for this vlog. God, this vlog is gonna be really long, guys. My vlogs are always so long. No, says Agatha, there's no plot. We're only women talking. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. I have a gang of dogs here today. A friend of mine dropped off her dog so she could go to yoga. So this is Juubi. This is my friend's dog, Juubi, and Granola's here as well. And Juubi's like the cutest dog ever. But Nola's also cute, but he's just like a big fur ball. Look at him. He's just a big fur ball. He's saying hi to Nola. So I thought it'd be a fun way to start off the vlog with just a gang of dogs. Is it called a gang of dogs? What's it called? It's a pack of dogs. Actually, before I introduce the vlog, let me just give you guys an update. If you were following my community posts, some of you might have seen that I kind of announced that I embarrassingly slipped on the ice and hit the back of my head. I kind of have like a mild concussion, but I'm actually super lucky because I seem to not have caused too much damage. I'm having a little trouble with like just computing time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I was invigilating an exam and I was trying to give them a time warning, like you have 45 minutes left. And I was having trouble just calculating the time. It's Easter weekend or Passover. I decided like I was gonna do this when I was talking about my TBR. I'm gonna film a vlog of the memoir of Sarah Polley called Run Towards the Danger. She was a child actor and she's a Canadian director who directed and adapted this book for a film adapted this book for a film of the same name, Women Talking, which is a novel by Miriam Toews. And a lot of people have been talking about this book, Women Talking, and the film, Women Talking, and I thought I would watch the film during the reading vlog. I think Sarah Polley's life is quite interesting. Like I was doing a little bit of research and she made a documentary about her experience discovering that her father wasn't her real father, which I did not know about her, which is super intense. So I think I might watch that documentary. This is going to be my read for People April, so I thought I'd vlog about it, and I thought this would be just an interesting combination to read as a reading vlog for the spring. I realized I probably should have said something about women talking for anybody who's not sure, and just to prepare people who are going to be watching the vlog, because it might be a bit of a disturbing reading experience. It's about, and it's very upfront to know what this book is about, because in the very first, I've just started, I'm like 20 pages in, but in the very first part, it does say that it's about recounting the experiences of a group of Mennonite women in a Mennonite colony. I don't know if it's about their testimony or how they deal with it, but it's about how the women are, during the night when the women are asleep, 8 men were found to have gone into their sleeping quarters, drugged them, and raped them. So trigger warning at the head of this vlog. I heard it was a bit of a disturbing reading experience, so I'm curious to see how I go with it. That's why I'm trying to pair it with like Sarah Polley's memoir, because I'm hoping it will be a good reading experience, or interesting at the very least. I don't know what my plans are. Today we've got the puppy. We're gonna go for a big walk with the 2 dogs. And then I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna do stuff around Montreal. So I might go to the Biodome, which is such a cool place. It's a place that houses animals in their natural habitat. I don't know how that's linked to the books, but I thought it would be fun to take you there because they have penguins and all kinds of cute animals. I'm not really sure where this vlog is gonna lead, and that's the fun of it. But I definitely am gonna read these 2 books and watch those 2 films. So at minimum, you'll be getting that in the vlog. So I hope you stick around. I hope I haven't scared you off with the dogs and with the disturbing reading. And yeah, we'll go visit some cute animals to make up for. We'll go visit the penguins to make up for the potential imbalance, okay? So yeah, stick with me and I'll see you soon. Oh, there's one other thing I just wanted to mention because I feel so awkward about it. I was just checking out Nelle's channel, and I hope I say the name of your channel right, Nelle. I think it's Bugunt. And I noticed that Nelle did a vlog for her reading experience of Women Talking, and I haven't watched it yet because I haven't read the book yet. But no, I didn't realize. I'm going to link her vlog down below and I'm going to watch it at the end of the vlog. So you're welcome to the mayhem. I will keep you updated on what happens. Yeah, so guys, I think the dogs have finally calmed down. Do you want to see some footage of the doggos? Juubi's chilling. He finally got the bone that he was fighting for. Juubi, did you get the bone you were fighting for? Yes, she did. And Granola's there too. Look at you two boys. We're going to be taking you guys out for walks. We're going to take you guys out for walks.
As a kid, I used to live out by a lake, with lightning bugs collecting sticks and secret handshakes. I was invincible then, my heart so pure I had no fear. And those were the years that I hold so dear. And it felt so right, having you by my side. I would never waste your time or mine. Do you ever think about the time when we were young? Everything we dreamt of being, we had so much fun. I don't wanna lose your love. I've been wishing on the stars above. If I go back in time for
Get a treat. Good boy. You doing your bees outside? What a good boy. Can I give Juubi a treat? Juubi, you want a treat? He doesn't care.
The sky was wide open and everything was crystal clear. Anything that you would tell me, I just couldn't wait to hear. And we'd soak up the sun, smiling ear to ear. 'Cause it felt so right, having you by my side. I would never waste your time or mine. Do you ever think about that time when we were young? Everything we dreamt of being, we had so much fun. I don't wanna lose your love. I've been wishing on the stars above. If I go back in time for enough, I know that I would find you.
Hey, hi. So we came back from our little walk with the dogs, had a nice visit, and then I started reading. And I really was like engrossed. I'm about 100 pages in. I'm 100 pages in. Oh. Okay, I really didn't know really much about this going in. I said that already, I think. But this is kind of crazy, hard to read. Crazy, really. What should I tell you? Well, oh, and Noel's chewing on a bone beside me, so I apologize for the chewy noises. The way that the way that the novel is constructed is that the story is told through the voice of a man named August, and he was asked by a woman named Ona Friesen to write down the minutes of a meeting taking place between women from this community who have come together to figure out how they're going to respond to these men who are the perpetrators of these attacks that took place in this Mennonite colony. The women of Malachna voted, so they had 3 options on their ballot. So these women, the women in this community can't read or write. So August is the minute taker. He's writing everything down for this meeting that they're having because they had a vote about what they should do in response to men who committed these assaults are in town, and they are probably going to be let out on bail. The women are trying to figure out what they should do, and their options were in the vote to do nothing, to stay and fight, or to leave. And they accompanied each option with illustrations. There was a deadlock between numbers 2 and 3. So to stay and fight or to leave. So then the women have to discuss how to make a decision. And then some of the stories that come out while they're discussing this are stories of some of the women and what happened to them, their attacks, which are really hard to read. The implications of both of these decisions and what the implications are for the women personally, as in for themselves and their families, and for the boys. So I'm 100 pages in, and there's a lot of discussion about what's going to happen with the men and their faith, and if what they're doing is sinful. And there are many layers already to this. Well, not already, I'm halfway through, but there are so many different layers to this story. So August, the character who's recording the minutes, been asked by Ona because they were close when they were younger. At this point, we know that he's in love with Ona, and his parents were excommunicated from the colony. He also left with them, but he has to go back into the community and was accepted if he renounced his parents. He becomes a school teacher in the community. Yeah, he said, he finally said he would allow me membership providing I renounced my parents in spite of one being dead and the other missing before the elders, and was baptized into the church and agreed to teach the boys basic English and simple math in return for shelter and 3 meals a day. I told Peters I would baptize and I would teach the boys, but that I wouldn't renounce my parents. So there's something to do with his father. I think his father was quite subversive. Like in the first 100 pages, we know that his father brought in materials into the community, like a book with paintings in it, because he talks about a painting by Michelangelo. We're introduced pretty quickly to the character of Salome, who is the mother of a 3-year-old child who was attacked and raped. This is really hard stuff to read. Her initial response was to attack the men with a scythe, like she was going to kill them. And she does say at one point, like, if she doesn't leave, like they're discussing staying and fighting or leaving, and they're discussing the sin because they've been told that they need to forgive the men, because according to their faith, if they don't forgive the men for what they've done, then they won't be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, probably. And so there's a lot of conversation about this idea. And Salome is very clearly the counter argument for this type of interpretation of God and faith, because she says that, would God not recognize me as protecting my child? She also says at one point that she cannot stay, because if she stays, she would commit a much bigger sin than not forgiving. She would kill someone. And so there's a lot of conversation about that. What is considered to be God and sin and forgiveness and faith. She's putting us right there with these women in this mindset where they have had no exposure to the outside world or other ways of thinking about faith or God, or this is how they've been raised. They've been completely sheltered from everything else except for this material that's been brought in by one of the members of the community. Their father died and left them a clock. And Peters won't allow this man to keep his clock because time is not relevant in the faith, because they are eternal and God's love is eternal, and there's no need for, man-made time. The first thing they do is that they try to identify, to make their decision, the pros and cons of each one. So they go through this list of pros and cons, and they very quickly fall into issues and problems of each option. So for example, the staying and fighting, they list the pros. The pros are, we won't have to leave. We won't have to pack. We won't have to figure out where we're going or experience the uncertainty of not knowing where we are going. We don't have a map of any place. So not having a map becomes an important issue for making this decision, which goes to show how ill-equipped the women feel to be able to operate in the real world or survive in the real world outside of even the ideas of, you know, what it means for their faith and what it means about them being recognized by their God if they leave. The cons says we won't be forgiven. We don't know how to fight, which Salome interjects and says she knows how to fight. I think she's a rebellious character, and we don't want to fight. There's a risk that conditions will be worse after fighting than before for them, which is absolutely clear, of course. Or that, I guess, implied too that they might lose the fight. That there's an idea that they might be able to improve their community by staying and fighting and seeking justice. And then there's a lot of discussion about whether that would really happen. Ona has this idea that she says men and women will make all decisions for the colony collectively. Women will be allowed to think. Girls will be taught to read and write. The schoolhouse must display a map of the world so that we can begin to understand our place in it. A new religion extrapolated from the old but focused on love will be created by the women of Malachna. Another woman, Greta, says, you're a dreamer. That's not going to happen. And they do the pros and the cons of leaving. The pros are we will be gone. We will be safe. We will not be asked to forgive the men because we will not be here to hear the question. They don't even get into the cons because they start to worry about if they were to leave, how would they leave and what would happen to the men. And what would the options be for the men if they were to leave? In other words, would the men come with them? Would they be left behind? And so then they go through a list of options for the men and the older boys if the women decide to leave. A question about the boys of a certain age and at what age are they men? And all of this is really heart-wrenching for Salome in particular because she has a son named Aaron, and it's a question of like, is Aaron going to go with us or is he going to be left behind? Am I going to be asked? It's very Sophie's choice. Am I going to be asked to leave my son behind? Oh my God. Okay, so that's kind of where I am. The last part that I just read though was about this idea of God and being forgiven. They realize that they need to tell the men why they're not going to be home for supper because they only have a certain amount of time to make this decision. I think it's 48 hours, and they're still discussing, and they are coming up with lies that they need to tell the men about what it is they're doing. And then they point out that lying is a sin and they shouldn't be lying and they shouldn't be asking other people to pass on their lies for them. And there starts to be all this concern about the women who voted to do nothing and if they would betray them. And then at one point Salome erupts and she raises her voice, causing me to awaken me up as her 3-year-old daughter. We do not have to be forgiven by the men of God, she shouts, for protecting our children from the depraved actions of vicious men who are often the very same men we are meant to ask for forgiveness. If God is a loving God, he will forgive us himself. If God is a vengeful God, then he has created us in his image. If God is omnipotent, then why has he not protected the women and girls of Malachna? And she says that she will destroy any living thing that harms her child. She will tear them from limb to limb. She will desecrate its body and she will bury it alive. She will challenge God on the spot to strike her dead if she has sinned by protecting her child from evil. And furthermore, by destroying the evil that it may not harm another. She will lie, she will hunt, she will kill, and she will dance on graves and burn forever in hell before she allows another man to satisfy his violent urges with the body of her 3-year-old child. So I'm like getting choked up just reading that. Woo! Hell yeah. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And that's at that point where she said, if I stay, I'll kill someone. And that's a worse sin than not forgiving the men and not being welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. So Miriam Toews, I know, grew up in a Mennonite community, but I don't know that much about her. At the beginning of the book, she acknowledges that it's based on this true event. So yeah, crazy. Did I just talk for 20 minutes? Yes, I just talked for 20 minutes. It's going to be a long vlog. I think I'm going to stop there for today because my head is starting to hurt and 100 pages is a lot. I might start reading the memoir this evening, but I will check back with you tomorrow morning. Bye. Oh, I wasn't even recording that whole time. I give myself a timer of 5 minutes. Let's just reset that because I'm going to need the full 5 minutes. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? I am doing okay. I watched about 3/4 of the documentary by Sarah Polley made in 2012 called Stories We Tell last night, which is about it's the story about her discovering that her father, who she'd known all of her life until she was, I think, 28, wasn't her birth father, and that her mother had had an affair with a man in Montreal who was her birth father, and it documents that experience of her meeting him, discovering the suspicions about another person, because her mother had come to act in a play at the Centaur Theatre here in Montreal, and there was a lot of rumor that it was one of the other actors in the play, and it turns out, I don't want to give anything away. So it's very well done, and I haven't finished the whole thing. But wow, I didn't know that about Sarah Polley. I know very little about Sarah Polley, so it is interesting for me to be including her memoir in this vlog. But I will say it's already been a very difficult read in some ways. Her memoir is called Run Towards the Danger, Confrontations with a Body of Memory. So she's definitely set it up that she's confronting difficult or challenging experiences in her life in these essays. There are 6 essays. She's an excellent writer. The first essay is beautifully written. The first essay describes her experience as a child actor, in particular on the stage at Stratford, and her debilitating stage fright, among other things that she was dealing with at that age, including a scoliosis diagnosis. And she writes really beautifully and does a lot of interweaving of the story of Alice in Alice in Wonderland in her telling of her experience as a child actor, and I thought that was really interesting, a really interesting way to present it. And then the second essay that I just finished reading is about Jian Ghomeshi. So I'm not sure if all of my viewers will know about Jian Ghomeshi. Jian Ghomeshi was a CBC interviewer on a show called Q. It was actually called Q with Jian Ghomeshi, and he was accused by several women, including the unbelievably courageous Lucy Decoutere, of assault, and it's really intense. And there was a lot of rumor about Sarah Polley and if she had been a victim of his, and she addresses that in her second essay. She also explores memory and lying and the judicial system. The judicial system and the trial itself of Jian Ghomeshi here in Canada was so harrowing. Yeah, so trigger warnings for this book as well, particularly for sexual assault. She talks about her experience and her decision not to come forward. She also talks about the judicial system and the advice that she got not to come forward and the reasons why. And it's a very difficult read because she was obviously so incredibly conflicted about it, and she was really young when she had her encounter when she was assaulted by Jian Ghomeshi. So Lucy Decoutere was the one who came forward first, and she was just, her life was really negatively impacted by the trial, and it was just horrifying. But it's also the way the judicial system works. I don't know what to say about that. I'm going to try to link some resources in the description box below. And if I can find an interview with Lucy, I'll include that there. There's also an interview with Sarah Polley, I think, for the New York Times about this as well that I'll leave linked. But it's crazy because she does describe in this essay a scene where she goes back and she looks at her interviews with Jian on Q, and she is trying to understand her own diminutive behavior and her flirtatiousness with him after having been assaulted. It's super interesting to see her examine her own responses and her own trauma around that. And then, yeah, I could talk more about the first chapter about when she had stage fright, because she does, it's a very intense experience for her as well. And also the documentary stories we tell about her father. So her mother died when she was, I think, 11, and she does talk about that. She's starting to talk about that in this third essay that I've started reading, which is, I think, about her pregnancy. So that must have been really horrible, and she was left to live with her father, and it's just a story of a girl who had to grow up way too fast in a circumstance where her father was very ill-equipped to take care of her, and he treated her as an adult. So that was their relationship. Just read a passage from that because I think that's interesting, because I think it probably says a lot about her as a person, and also it's not an uncommon experience. Or even the relationship with her father, I think, resonated with me. She writes, I hated that my dad left chicken pot pies on the stovetop for a week, insisting they didn't need to be refrigerated, or that he made the red cabbage 3 weeks before Christmas dinner, and that the cards he played solitaire with no longer had images on them. I tried to block out the mornings I had woken up to find him still sleepless, staring at reams of papers on the dining room table, full of tiny, neatly written mathematical equations, numbers doubling and quadrupling until he ran out of space in the millions. I later discovered he was trying to ascertain how many humans had had to copulate in order to produce him, and how many of those couplings were likely rapes. How much violence am I a product of? He said, looking helpless and childlike. I wonder, in retrospect, if these moments were signs of a typical eccentric Englishman who'd never had to do a single domestic duty until his wife died, or of mental illness, or early signs of the dementia that would be diagnosed many years later. I suppose I'll never know, and there is something I can't help but find funny about how closely these states might resemble each other. So that's a little taste of her writing. Her writing is really fantastic, and it's a pretty astonishing memoir so far. So I'm very excited to continue reading it, and I definitely think you should pick it up. Definitely pick this one up. I'll be saying that at the end of the video as well. I am a little bit behind in my marking. I need to do some work today because the college was closed on Thursday because of the crazy ice storm that we had. I'll just put a picture here of the damage, crazy ice storm. Anyway, so yeah, I have to do some marking today. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to vlog today, but tomorrow we are definitely going to see the penguins because we need to see some cute animals now. This is really, we're really getting into territory where it's like we really need to see some cute animals. So I'll probably not, I'm not sure if I'm going to do any more reading today. I'll probably update you again tomorrow.
Blue dude, blue moon, kinda mysterious, shaded with someone I'm not really into. Do you need to fix it? Talking bullshit. It's hard to see you when your eyes look dull. Who's gonna save you? Who's gonna make you not blue? Not blue.
Good morning. Good morning. I almost finished Women Talking. No, wrong one. I'm almost finished Women Talking. I have like 10, 15 pages left or something, and the tension, it's building. And I just look at I have so many notes. It's kind of crazy. I don't know. I'm going to start off with Sarah Polley's memoir though, because I read another chapter or another essay, High Risk, and it's about her pregnancy. And then it was another hard essay to read, and very much dealing with the medical system and the way that they treat new mothers. And it just was kind of triggering for me. It's not the first time that she talks about her experience with the medical system, because she talks about it in the first essay when she has her scoliosis diagnosis. But this is more to do with the way new moms are treated and people with any kind of medical complications and the fear that goes along with that and the anxiety about being a new mother. And in particular, she talks about her experiences with breastfeeding, which is a big issue for new moms. And it was super triggering. Like, I was crying. And then as I watched the remainder of the documentary, Stories We Tell, and I was just sobbing. Here's a clip.
Hey guys, it's me. I'm just like finished watching the documentary about Sarah Polley's family, and it's making me cry. Anyway, I don't know, I just thought I should pull out the camera because it's a vlog, and oh god, I should have been filming this during Misery May.
Yeah, so the loss of her mom was just so sad, and it's really interesting. At the end of that documentary, she does explore the idea of what the truth is and how do we get to the truth and whose story is the truth, and memory, and how do we remember things. It's fascinating. Not a new topic, but it was super well done, very well done. Highly recommend it, especially if you want to cry. Oh, and by the way, we're going to the Penguins today. Like, we're going directly to the Biodome. I'm like, forget culture, forget museums. I need cute animals. So I booked a ticket. You have to reserve a ticket online, or at least it's recommended. And I have a car. I reserved a shared car. I'm part of Communito, which is a shared car service, and we're going. And we'll see if we can find some good food. But in the meantime, I think I'll give a quick update before I give my final thoughts. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. There's so much to say about this book. The conversation continues. There's still a lot of debate about religion, but we've moved more into the way that she's written this, with August being the minute taker and his contribution. So he makes contributions to the narrative because he's the minute taker. There are so many layers to this in terms of women having their own voice, hence the title Women Talking, and how those voices and their voice in terms of also their interpretations of God and faith and human nature, and just so many aspects of their community, how they're suppressed. So there's an exploration of power and power dynamics. And August really does represent a couple of different things. Like, he represents, obviously he's a man, so he has more power, but he also represents a man who was excommunicated. So he does represent an othered aspect to the community. He sort of represents soft masculinity. At one point he cries and the women are completely shocked at his crying, and he has this artistic sensibility. And because he was talking about this Michelangelo painting. So there's this idea about art and what art can mean, and art as your faith, art as an act of rebellion. There's this idea about how power corrupts and power dynamics, and how power is maintained in the community, and in particularly through education. The women at one point defer to him because he's telling them a story about the Titanic, and it reads, "None of the women in the loft have heard of the Titanic. None of the women in the loft have seen an ocean. Their measured and polite attention to my fact is embarrassing. They are silent, nodding, giving the fact its due. So just the power of education and how keeping these women uneducated, unable to read, unable to write is a way of obviously maintaining power over them, and how much they defer to someone in a position of knowledge. But then there's also an exploration about how knowledge and facts can be manipulated, that the Bible is obviously misinterpreted and misused and abused for the sake of power. I mean, it's all territory that I feel like we know about, but the book is sort of dystopian in a certain way, but she's also able to help us to equate it to today, to modern society, the patriarchy, or capitalism, both actually. There are also a couple of instances where stories were told about other members of the community who have committed suicide or have suffered. Even one of the men interrupts the meeting at one point. His name is Klaus, and everyone's very fearful of Klaus, and he is violent. But he also, at one point, he has a toothache, and they don't get any medical help. So he is suffering. Some of the men are regularly drinking and getting drunk. So she's really saying like the system causes everyone to suffer. Like there's nobody that's really thriving under this system in this community. Anyway, I could go on. I know that this is a little bit like rambly. That's what happens when you're doing a reading vlog. I'm going to go ahead and watch the movie tonight. I think that Sarah Polley will do justice to this. I mean, first of all, this is very much the narrative, because it's this character taking the minutes of this meeting. The narrative is very much sort of, it feels like you're reading a script for a play a little bit, with, you know, the fourth wall kind of being broken by the minute taker's notes, which is an interesting commentary on women's accurately portraying what is fiction, what is real, what really happened, what's the truth. So again, that's a parallel to what Sarah Polley is exploring in her documentary. And then I think Sarah Polley, I think she'll be very true to the book, I'm imagining, with her script. So I'm really interested to watch the movie. At one point, Ernie, whose loft it is that they're holding the meetings in, comes and says to Agatha, he asks if the women are plotting to burn down his barn, because he knows something is going on. No, Ernie, says Agatha, there's no plot. We're only women talking. Amazing. This book is blowing my mind. This book is blowing my mind. Ah, I'm so glad I'm reading it. Yay! Oh, and Miriam Toews, like, wow. Wow. Anyway, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the movie. This has been such a good reading experience, as difficult as it has been. But I'm not finished. So let's go see some penguins. Let's go see some cute animals, because I literally have cried and sobbed. I have sobbed this morning reading this, and have sobbed last night reading this. So time for the cute animals.
If you don't get what you
Wow, it's such a gorgeous day. I did not realize how packed it was going to be in there. It was just full of people. I should have realized because it is a holiday weekend. See the structure in the back of me? Isn't that cool? That was so much fun. I enjoyed that tremendously. It was a very good antidote to, I don't know, the frustration and sadness that I've been feeling reading the books that I've been reading for this reading vlog. So it's a very good antidote. These animals are kept in their what would be as close to their natural habitat as possible. They keep all of the climate. They have 4 different climates in the biodome. So tropical, I think I showed, you'd already see in the different climates. There's tropical, Laurentians, subarctic. It's a really cool place. We didn't see all the animals, but we saw a lot of animals today. I think they have a lynx. The lynx was hiding. The beaver was hiding. Some of the animals were hiding. They're nocturnal, so they weren't around. But I really enjoyed that. It was so nice. And now I'm going to go home and do kind of boring stuff like laundry and, kind of boring weekend domestic chores for the rest of the day. And then I'll probably check into the film Women Talking this evening, and I'll give you guys an update tomorrow, I think, of everything. I'll probably finish Sarah Polley's memoir as well. I read one more chapter before I left the house, or one more essay before I left the house, which was another essay about being a child actor, and it was also kind of heavy. So yeah, I think I'm just going to take a little break this afternoon and kind of relax. Try not to get hit by a car. And yeah, I'll see you guys a little later. Bye. Hello. Good morning. It's the next day. It's a beautiful sunny day today. The kind of day where all of Montreal will be out. So I'm going to get out there and maybe go to a cafe or something. Definitely take the dogs out. So I woke up this morning with like a bit of a sore neck. I think I might have given myself some whiplash or some. My neck has been hurting ever since I fell. I'm okay, but I did take a little bit of a hit. I watched Women Talking the film last night, and I finished reading Sarah Polley's set of 6 essays as a memoir. Her last essay, she talks about having a concussion. And I was like, this is so weird. What is going on? I don't know how this happened. I don't know how there's so many things going on at the same time with this reading vlog. It's a little weird. She talks about getting a concussion. She was at her local pool and a fire extinguisher fell on her head, and just how she suffered with the symptoms for a long time. She actually didn't get a very heavy headache until 3 weeks later, so I'm really nervous, but she had a lot of conflicting information from doctors. I'll put the books down while I'm talking. Some said she was fine, and some told her to rest, and just a lot of different conflicting pieces of information about what to do when you have a concussion, which I think is probably... That seems about right. My experiences with the medical system is that there are just a lot of limitations. There's a lot that we don't know how to manage. Her essay and her memoirs had a lot to do with her experience as a child actor and how the conditions for child actors are just not at a standard that she would find acceptable for her own kids or for herself, and just her experiences with that. I mean, amongst all kinds of other things. It's really interesting when she was talking about her concussion, because she talks about like never being the type of person to buy sort of snake oil or vitamins or that sort of stuff, and how she immediately was spending thousands of dollars on any kind of remedy. And I can completely relate to that. Not to do with the concussion that I just had, but I've had some problems with digestion, which is the same thing. They don't know anything about it, and you're just trying to relieve yourself of these awful symptoms. It does end on a positive note, and clearly she's been able to manage her symptoms. And, you know, she just made this film and just won an Oscar. So I think she's figured out how to manage it. I mean, she does talk about having to go down to the States to see a doctor in the States. And then later in the notes to the book, she talks about advocating for public health care. It's a little bit difficult to think that you have to pay necessarily for an expert opinion. But it was through going down to an expert in the States that she was able to find a way to overcome the symptoms of her concussion. It was a definitely challenging book to read. It was very, very sad in places, and especially when it came to, well, obviously the Giangaveshi stuff, which I've already talked about, but also just her family and the loss of her mother and the neglect as a child that she experienced, and then as a child actor later on. I think it's interesting because I just finished watching the film Women Talking, which she directed, and I just have to assume, because one of the things that struck me about the movie, and the film is very good, but it's quite different from the book. So I'll just talk a little bit about how I found it to be a little bit different from the book. And also, in some ways, the film is very progressive, even more so progressive than the book, because they changed a few things. But one of the things I noticed that she did really well with the film was the vulnerability of the children, child actors in the film. There are a lot of them because there are a lot of children in the colony, and she really did this really good job of showing the children as innocent. Now, the innocence of these children in a situation that, I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to extend the innocence to everyone. I don't think so. I think the way she portrayed the children as being innocent versus the adults who, every adult in some way is participating in the system of the community. And there was a lot of discussion about this idea of when the boys turn a certain age and when could they leave, and at what point do people become responsible. Anyway, there's so many different topics that have come up over the course of doing this vlog that I almost feel a little overwhelmed by it all. So I'm just going to try to keep my final thoughts brief, and then I'll let them stew. And then when I do my wrap at the end of the month, I'll probably have other thoughts. I'm sure the children were well treated on Sarah's set after everything that she's been through. The other thing that I realized when I went to the Biodome, and it's something that wasn't addressed very much in the film, but did come up over and over again in the book, which I forgot to mention, was this relationship between civilized people and animals. Because a lot of the time, Miriam Toews brings up the comparison to animals, and the women talk about how they are not animals and they're not behaving like animals. But if you look back on their decision to stay and fight or to leave, that's literally the response, the brain's response to danger is to fight. It's a fight or flight response. So I didn't even get that. I didn't get that until just now or last night when I was watching the movie. I totally got that. And it's interesting too to tie it into Sarah's memoir about, the title is Run Towards the Danger, and the advice that she gets from the concussion specialist is to run towards these symptoms. And it's this idea of really confronting fearful things. I went ahead and I watched Nelle's vlog, and I'm going to link it, as I said, in the description box below. And I think she caught that more so than I did. There's some things that she talks about that I didn't quite catch, so I encourage you to go and watch her vlog. Nelle's great. If you're not subscribed to her channel, I would assume you are if you watch my channel, but you should subscribe to her channel. So yeah, this whole idea of an animal response, and then I was watching back the footage that I took from the Biodome, and I was thinking, oh, it totally makes sense that I went to the Biodome for this vlog, because there's this one part of the footage where there's a monkey like looking in his tail to clean itself, and he looks, what they're doing looks so, what the monkey is doing looks quite sophisticated, and it's just, yeah, this whole relationship between civilized people, animals, consciousness, responsibility, a lot to be said. And I'm not probably being as articulate as I should, because it's a lot to think about. So one of the things that she did in the film, which I think Nelle had an issue with when I watched her vlog, and it's an interesting point, is she shifted the narration of story from August's perspective to Ache's perspective. She's the daughter of Marike, who is one of the characters. I learned how to pronounce all the characters' names by watching the film. That was good. So in some ways, it's a little bit more, the film is more focused on the women. There is, in fact, no representation of Peters, the leader of the colony. He's not represented and he's not mentioned. They only mention the elders. And there's not a lot of talk about the actual beliefs in the film. It focuses more on the attacks and the women's response to the attacks, and the conflict that the women feel as mothers, and mostly as mothers, but also as members of this community, and their willingness to pass judgment on the men if they might be guilty. So I thought that was really interesting. There's no real establishment of any men in the film except for August and the boys and Aaron, who is Salome's son. In many ways, the film is quite different from the book. A lot of the philosophical stuff isn't included. The stuff about the Michelangelo art and those sorts of things just aren't included. And in some ways, the filming, it's very stark and it's very dark. Like feels very dark, the film. And it is very much like a stage interaction because it all takes place in this one space. But with that being said, it is very cinematic. It's very beautifully shot. So, but it left me very sad. I found this reading vlog to be quite miserable, quite sad, quite upsetting. For the most part, it was a big vlog. It was very emotional. It was very thought-provoking, but I feel completely drained after filming this vlog. It really made me think about Educated, which is the memoir of Tara Westover, and her experiences growing up in, I don't think it was a Mennonite, it was Mormon. So this was a similar, like in a Mormon family, and especially the parts about leaving everything to the will of God. It just really reminded me of this book. And I guess because I said before it was kind of dystopian, I guess too it reminded me a little bit, of course, of Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, which Nelle also mentioned. Yeah, I don't know. I was reading that Miriam Toews helped Sarah with the writing of her book, so clearly it's all very closely connected. So I'm really glad that I made this reading vlog, and I thought it was a really good intellectual experience for me, but it was also very, very emotional. So I'm heading out to get a coffee and walk around in the sunshine and maybe look at some crocuses. And I will see you in my next video. If you've watched to the end of this vlog, you're amazing, and I love you guys. Bye.